Welcome back to the River City Rundown. It's time for your waiver wire pickups heading into week number 4. We've got some must-add running backs, wide receivers worth stashing, and some quarterback streaming options with a juicy matchup. Let's get right into it. Starting off with the running backs, the number one priority is a must-add running back for the Arizona Cardinals, Trey Benson. With the loss of James Conner most likely to the year, Trey Benson is instantly going to be fantasy relevant. He was already making a role for himself with James Conner as the starting back. Now that he has no one else to split the carries with, Trey Benson is instantly going to be flex worthy at worst, most likely RB2 value upside. And in the event that Trey Benson has already been rostered, look for Bashal Tutin, running back out of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, he's also been rostered in most leagues, but he's a guy who's a change of pace back for the Jags, and he has been carving out a role for himself regardless of being the second option behind ETN. I want to mention two names that I think you should consider picking up as options if necessary. Now, starting off with the Kansas City backfield, I've got Kareem Hunt. Truth be told, I'd rather avoid this backfield if at all possible, but in the event you have to choose one, I'd go with Hunt as he is the more efficient of the two backs between him and Isaiah Pacheco. Kareem Hunt is going to get the goal line carries, and somebody's got to run the ball back there, so I would rather choose him if I had to make a choice between the two. The other guy is Blake Corum. He's another running back who's an insurance hold more than anything else at this time, as he's the backup to Kyren Williams, but he's getting meaningful touches, he's earned the trust of the coaching staff, and he is going to continue to have a role in this offense. His role is steadily expanding, and I would think that if anything happens to Kyren Williams, he's going to be a guy you should feel comfortable throwing into your lineup. So if you are looking for a stash, Blake Corum is one of the most valuable backups in the league. The wide receiver I think is worth considering for a waiver wire pickup this week is Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. Currently rostered in less than 1% of fantasy leagues on ESPN, Tolbert is a guy who I think will handle the majority of the underneath routes. In the slot mainly, I do think that George Pickens will remain to be the vertical threat as Jake Ferguson continues to have his role as well underneath. But I think that if you were really deciding between Tolbert and Turpin, I think that Tolbert is more of a seamless fit or transition into that role than it would be with Kevontae Turpin. I also believe that with Dallas as underdogs in their next matchup against the Packers, somebody's going to need to get those targets, and he could be very, very busy. I think that his current fantasy role is going to be more of a bench stash this week against a really, really tough Packers defense. But should he have a decent outing, I think that he could be worth a flex spot as the schedule kind of lightens up in the next few weeks. And the wide receiver I think has the most value this week for you to add on your team is Trey Tucker, wide receiver from the Las Vegas Raiders. He's just rostered in about 2% of leagues through ESPN Fantasy. Right now, he's looking like he could potentially have a breakout season. Now, in preseason, he did show some flashes of chemistry with Geno Smith, but I obviously cannot see him putting up another legacy game like he did this past week, putting up almost 150 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, and 9 catches. I will say that as of late, it's been a down year for Brock Bowers, of course by his standards since he had a sensational rookie year. Ashton Jeanty is not being utilized in the passing game, and when he is getting rush attempts, the offensive line is not creating much space for him to go through. Jacoby Myers is a steady presence on this offense, but I would say that with Geno Smith being a gunslinger that he is, the ball is going to get thrown maybe 35 to 40 times a game. Now that leaves 8 to 10 targets for Bowers, another 8 to 10 for Jacoby Myers, which leaves plenty more for other pass catchers in this offense. I think there's possibility that Trey Tucker can carve out a decent role for himself, and as of right now, I think he's another guy who is worth a bench stash, maybe not playable just yet, but should his target share continue to remain consistent, he's going to be a guy that you'd rather have on your team than see your opponent have. Another neat little stat about Trey Tucker, he's been on the field for 90% of the plays throughout the 3 games this season. 90%. That means he's constantly on the field with those other guys I mentioned, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and Ashton Jeanty. So with him being on the field so often, the opportunities are bound to come. Trey Tucker is a guy I think is worth picking up in the waiver wires this week. And the guy that I would say has the most upside for potential as far as quarterback streaming options go is Sam Darnold. Rostered in just over 7.5% of leagues on ESPN, Darnold looks like he's legit. And I mean, if you really think about it, was he the reason behind Minnesota's success last year? Is he the reason that Seattle looks so sharp this season? I don't know, but it is something to think about. Now, with Jackson Smith and Jigba as his clear number 1 receiver in this offense, with Cooper Kupp, you've also got Kenneth Walker III doing his thing, and then you've got Zach Charbonnet. This offense has some pieces, and I think that Sam Darnold is going to make plays with his legs when necessary, he makes the right decision, and he delivers the ball on time and on target. If you need a guy to fill in for a starting quarterback who may have been injured or a guy on a bye week, I would feel comfortable starting Sam Darnold in that spot. And a tight end that I think you should consider is Okonkwo, tight end from the Tennessee Titans. Now, things have looked pretty bleak for the Titans so far through 3 weeks, as rookie quarterback Cam Ward has been struggling early out the gates. But Okonkwo, on 16 targets, has posted 12 catches for 120 yards and no touchdowns yet. Although I do believe that the touchdowns will come. I do expect Cam Ward to continue looking in his tight end's direction on 3rd and shorts and red zone opportunities. He's a guy who I can see his touchdown number increasing as Cam Ward gets more comfortable in this offense. Okonkwo is a guy who I think you should feel okay with sliding into your spot as a tight end, as the pickings have been slim this year so far. A defense worth mentioning streaming this week is the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, quick note, last week was the week of the defense. I mean, I cannot count on one hand how many defensive scores we saw, how many blocked field goals, how many interceptions and fumble recoveries. I mean, it was by far a week dominated by the defenses. If you had the Minnesota Vikings on your team, you most likely won as well. In this week, I think the Chargers are ready to feast, as they're set to go up against Jackson Dart and the New York Giants. I think the Giants are going to be up against a tough matchup here. I expect the Chargers to disguise some blitzes, throw some different coverages and looks at the rookie, and they're going to get in the backfield early and often. I wouldn't have too much hope on him having a breakout game, although I do think he'll have a successful career. I don't see it starting this Sunday against the Chargers. Again, I cannot emphasize enough. The number one priority for waivers this week is adding Trey Benson to your team if he's still available. Now, if I only had one claim and Trey Benson's already been taken, I feel confident going after a guy like Trey Tucker. I think the upside is there, he's always on the field, and that's only going to lead to good things. Maybe the targets haven't been there yet, but that's not to say that that doesn't turn around. I think Trey Tucker is someone you should go after if you don't need immediate flex production just yet. But you might want to have him on your team, so when things do turn around, he's already ready to put in your lineup. And there's a player I think you should consider stashing on your team. Luther Burden III, wide receiver from the Chicago Bears. He's obviously the number 3 option at the receiver position on the Bears. But heading into the season and through 3 weeks, there's been a lot of chatter lately about the potential of trading DJ Moore. Now, while there's been no concrete evidence of the Bears looking to move on from Moore, it's been rumored that they could make a deal. If that does in fact happen, Luther Burden III instantly slides into that wide receiver 2 spot, and he has already been a deep vertical threat. Picture this, I think he would have the production similar to a J-Mo from the Detroit Lions his rookie year. More of a vertical threat who makes the most out of his touches. He might only get 4 catches a game, but they're going to be for upwards from 75 to 100 yards a game. Luther Burden III is somebody I would consider stashing on my team, again, if you don't need immediate flex production. Another quarterback streaming option for this week, I think Geno Smith is worth mentioning. As the Las Vegas Raiders head up against the Chicago Bears, one of the worst defenses in the league so far, Geno Smith is an opportunity to eat. I think that the Raiders are going to be playing from behind quite often this year. And although I don't expect him to win a lot of games, he's going to have to throw the ball to keep them in it. And with Brock Bowers' knee injury further behind him, you've got Jacoby Myers as a steady, consistent force in this offense, and possible emergence of Trey Tucker. Hopefully, Ashton Genty can become a force in the passing game as well. I think Geno Smith is going to have a big game this week, and if you need a quarterback streaming option, feel comfortable sliding him in that role. In my fantasy league this week, Daniel Jones was the number 1 target for just about everybody. The guy who ended up getting him didn't even play him. He picked him up because Joe Burrow got hurt, but he ended up playing Drake May over Daniel Jones. And statistically, that was a good decision. But Daniel Jones wasn't called on to be the main guy he had been the first 2 weeks of the year, as Jonathan Taylor ran all up and down the Tennessee Titans. But this week, I think Daniel Jones bounces back, and he's going to be a guy you can count on if you did indeed pick him up for last week's waiver wire. Let me know, who's your number 1 waiver wire pickup this week? Drop it in the comments or DM me on Instagram. That wraps up the waiver wire pickups for week 4. This week's top waiver wire pickup is Trey Tucker. Don't let him slip through the cracks. Make sure you're subscribed to River City Rundown, and check back on Thursday for my starts and sits of week 4. Catch you then.